Final Fantasy XV poses a lot of questions for long-term fans of the series and newcomers alike. Will it live up to the hype? Is the story actually any good? And does it feel like a proper Final Fantasy game? Well, we're here to answer those questions and we think you'll like what we have to say. So let's start with the story. Whilst a lot of the actual cutscenes and story missions seem quite disparate from one another, there is a strong through-line narrative tying it all together. Crown Prince Noctis is basically on a quest to retake his homeland, and his royal entourage are on hand to help him out. These four boys are easily the highlight of the game. The first half of Final Fantasy XV is basically dedicated to fleshing them out as characters, letting you get to know them and their personalities, whilst functionally showing you what they can do, whether that's in battle or in the field. The game has you camping out a lot to level up. Any experience earned in combat is cashed in here, and depending on what ingredients you've collected, self-designated Chef Ignis can whip up meals that confer various benefits. It's an interesting mechanic, and the progression it all works towards feels pretty similar to Final Fantasy X's sphere grid system, something we know a lot of fans like. The second half of the game is much more linear. It's where Square Enix drops the training wheels and really lets you go for it. That might sound like all the worst bits about the start of Final Fantasy XIII coming back to haunt you, but it's not. We actually found the second half of the game better than the first in many ways, and the dungeon and level design here is some of the strongest in Final Fantasy history. That's a bold claim, but we think the game backs it up. The latter part of the game also has more of a focus on combat too, but don't worry, it's not particularly hard. That's not to say the game is a breeze though. The difficulty in the main game seems to be kept low so everyone can enjoy it, but if you're after more challenging fights you can seek them out via the game's hunts. They're side missions that show you more of Final Fantasy XV's technical side. You can't just hold down attack and win those ones, you've got to be more thoughtful.
Here I am!
The world the game is set in is one of the most beautiful we've seen on Xbox One and PS4. It could rival even The Witcher 3 for scale and beauty. Thing is, because the world is so big, it can sometimes be a pain to travel around. Fast travel options are bizarrely limited and you can't ride your precious chocobo everywhere you go, so there's a lot of running around. We understand Square Enix is keen to show off what it's created in the world of EOS, but sometimes spending 8 minutes in the car just to get to the next objective stunts the game's pacing a little bit. We don't want to push too far into the game's later content here, but fans of the series can rest assured that there is post-game content in a sense, and if you want to complete the game 100%, you're going to need to put way over 70 or 80 hours in, as an estimation. If you're keen to rush the main story, you could probably clear it in about 30 hours, but we don't recommend that, since the game's optional content is pretty integral to plot and mechanics. Final Fantasy XV is an ambitious game then, and it's built on such an impressive scale that we now understand why it took 10 years to develop. It's as broad and inviting as The Witcher 3, with as many deep systems as you'd expect from a mainline Final Fantasy game too. It's also brimming with Easter eggs and references that'll have long-term FF players gushing over the screen. We think Square Enix has delivered a strong, entertaining game here, one that'll stand up to hours and hours of play, and still have something to offer. It's big, it's bold, and it's entertaining. It's everything you want from an RPG you're gonna sink around 100 hours of your life into.